baseball nuts, and a big warm welcome to episode 10 of the Jonny and Josh Show. Number 10, one of my favorite numbers in the Bible, a symbol of perfection, harmony, and creation. How
Amen.
Ironic is that, given that I'm joined by the retrobates that are Eric, the producer, JC, and Big Davey Lengo. Boys, how are you?
Let's see how fast we can sin.
Let's move on. Trivia. What's our trivia this week, Eric? Anything that I might have heard of?
Trivia of the week, actually, because I was, we've seen a few manager ejections in the past few weeks, which is, I'm not saying being ejected as a manager is an art form or a dying art, but I was thinking, we all know that Bobby Cox has the all-time record for most ejections by an umpire with 161, and the current active manager with the most ejections from a game is Tony La Russa with 88.
I was going to say.
So my question to you, gentlemen, is which one of these three is second to Tony La Russa for most ejections as a manager?
Luis Rojas.
Is it A, Joe Madden? Or is it B, Terry Francona? Or is it C, Bob Melvin? So which of those three managers have been ejected the most times?
Bomel. They call him Bomel.
Bomel, yes. Which of those managers have been ejected the most times? And current active managers, that is.
It's a good question. Those guys have been around.
Yeah.
You think of the manager carousel, and then you mention those three managers and think, man, those guys have been
any of them. That's why it's
survivors.
It seems to be like a compiling longevity stat.
I think it's a great one. I mean,
it is.
Compared to your usual trivia,
they're all great. They're all great. Moving on.
Usually the questions are very poor, but this is actually a good one, Eric.
Where's the waffle? Did you bring the waffle today?
Okay, no, this time I remembered the bell, but you get that. Okay, speaking of waffle, I accidentally ate the last waffle this morning with my coffee.
Accidentally? I love
No.
It's like you were asleep.
I thought I had a stash, and then I realized,
Waffle.
and I grabbed the waffle, and I realized, oh no, that was the last one. I didn't have time.
He wakes up in a puddle with just waffle.
But hang on, why didn't you run out and get new waffles?
Because I was too busy preparing this damn show. There we go. Moving on.
Excuses.
Okay, third batter up. It is longtime Major League umpire Joe West, known as Cowboy Joe, for his country music exploits. Made history, boys, on Tuesday night, working his, and this is extraordinary, 5,376th regular game in his illustrious career, which has eclipsed the record of Bill Clem,
right.
a record that stood for 80 years. Now, I know you boys all seem chomping at the bit. You want to talk about Joe West. So who's going first? Dave, you want to go first?
This is.
I'll go first. A few things. First, Bill Clem, who you mentioned there in passing, still the great umpire. He umpired behind the plate, I think, double the amount of times as Joe West. So Joe West's games have not been all behind the plate, which is really, to me, the greatest measure of an umpire. But here's the thing about Joe West. I remember an umpire I knew when I lived in England who would always say, it's not a strike or a ball until I call it. Joe West is that kind of umpire, and that's exactly what you don't want in an umpire. He believed he was part of the game and that it was about him. The best umpires are the ones that sort of work behind the scenes. They do their job. They don't bring attention to themselves.
In
But
any
Joe West,
sport, you could say that.
In any sport, agreed. But baseball, you have quite a relationship. I remember, I think in 2010, 30% of Major League players ranked him as the worst umpire in all of Major League Baseball.
Worse than Angel Hernandez?
Yeah, it's shocking, but in fact, Angel wasn't even. C.K. Buckner was considered the worst, and then it was Joe West. So, and there were a few that liked him, and he has had relationships. I saw Dave Freese, longtime St. Louis Cardinal player, played for the Dodgers at the end of his career, who had said a really touching story about how they had been friends over his career. So I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but I'm saying that he has always been a bit of an attention hawk. He's always said, look at me. A lot of players and managers have suggested just as much, and that's not what you want out of a great umpire, in my opinion. But I think one manager had said that a lot of the attention seeker was to sell more albums for his own music. And so, I don't want to malign the guy. I mean, it's a great career. It's a long career. You should always give credit to durability and history. But just being there the longest doesn't make you the greatest.
Can we be honest about something? Umpires they're a little weird. It's a weird thing to be an umpire. Just generally speaking, that's my job. You're not playing, what is it? I interviewed Angel Hernandez and Al Clark. Al Clark got fired for taking his business class tickets and downgrading them to coach and pocketing the difference, and then went to jail for 4 months for selling BS baseball memorabilia. And then I interviewed Angel Hernandez, who was just one of the weirdest guys you've ever run into in your life. And after having those two experiences, there's been several weird umpire baseball stories over the years. And it just makes you wonder, like, who are these guys?
I think the other question that's still out there, right, is this record going to stand forever? Are we going to have robo umpires soon? And, C3PO will have the record here, and we won't have any more umpires to add that human touch. And that's the upside, right, is the human touch of it all, the interaction. If you watch old videos of umpires, getting into fights with Earl Weaver, on the base pass, it's part of the show. Exactly.
Which therefore means they have to be part of the show. And on that point about the record ever being beaten, he started umpiring at the age of 23. The norm now is 30. And therefore, and most umpires these days don't work more than about 120 games a season. So according to calculations, it would take an umpire who never missed a game for 45 years to threaten his mark. So unless they're related to Cal Ripken Jr., I don't think this record is ever going to be beaten.
My 2 cents about Joe West. I'll try to keep it brief, and I'll try to keep the language civilized. Yours truly was ejected off the field twice by Joe West.
Wow.
Once in Montreal Olympic Stadium.
So you have an axe to grind.
Where I was told to get the hell off the field because the game was about to begin, but the game was like 10 minutes away from first pitch. And so myself and my cameraman had to leave the grounds of the Olympic Stadium. And then the second time was at Comerica Park, was right in the middle of an interview with Jim Leyland pregame by the Tigers dugout. Luckily, I had just finished the interview, and Joe West comes over to me and told me again, get the bleep off this field. Why the hell are you still doing here? And I actually said, you again. And actually, I almost wanted him to give me like the whole, like, you're out of here kind of thing. So I got ejected twice by Joe West out of the game kind of thing. So, but nothing. What I did not appreciate about Joe West, he was presiding over the 1981 NLCS LA Dodgers against Montreal Expos, and he actually said, for the record, he said he was happy with the result because he doesn't think that a World Series should be going north of the border. Would you believe that? So there.
Wow. That's what Eric didn't tell you about that time in Montreal is that when he got thrown off the field, he was actually on the pitcher's mound and having a catch with his cameraman. That's what he didn't tell you.
Well, that was with one hand. The other hand, he was eating a hot dog, right?
Right.
For those of you who either agree or disagree with us here, there actually are 2 hashtags out there right now. One is hashtag Joe West is the worst, and the other one is hashtag leave Joe West alone. So make your own mind up and online and see what you think. Movie on. This week's baseball book of the week. I'm going to go spooky on you. Stephen King, who's written such eerie and spooky books such as The Dead Zone, Firestarter, and a load of other, Shawshank Redemption. So you think of all the.
That wasn't a book; it was a novella.
It's a novella. That's very good, from different seasons. Yeah. And also he's, It, with Penny Whistle. So
what's the one with the cars? Maximum Overdrive?
Maximum Overdrive was a terrible film and a terrible.
I liked the film. I thought it was all right.
And Carrie, of course, yes. Yeah. Misery. But this week, I give you the scary suspense novella. It's called Blockade Billy, written by Stephen King. Ooh, suspenseful. So somehow it's all about intrigue and mystery and suspense with a baseball backdrop. And to be honest, is it a Pulitzer Prize winning book? No. But even Stephen King said it took him 2 weeks to write this. He just wanted to write a baseball fiction book.
Can you believe
he loves
that?
He's a big Red Sox fan, right?
He's a huge Red Sox fan. He's also written a nonfiction book called Faithful about his time following the 2004 Boston Red Sox.
He wrote a book in 2 weeks?
He wrote a book at 122 pages. Now listen, it took him 2 weeks to write this. It took me a day to read this. I found this in a secondhand bookstore. Blockade Billy. It's also got another little short story in there called Mortality. Baseball book. Yeah, give it a shot. Blockade Billy, Stephen King. all about murder and intrigue in baseball. What's not to like? Moving on, pop culture when it intertwines with baseball. And this today I'll be going into into baseball, yes, absolutely. But I'll be going to TV shows. Sadly, I like to, for those who don't know, Gavin MacLeod, Captain Steubing of the Love Boat, passed away.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. So for those you don't remember the Love Boat, yes, it's one of those things. And
I love the Love Boat.
The Love Boat, exactly. Now the Love Boat was pretty much a retirement home for washed-up actors. Let's just face it.
Yay!
So
and a future congressman, Fred Grandy.
And
he once got. I got to tell you real quick, Fred Grandy's story. He once got into an elevator, and someone said, "Hey, Gopher, get me to the Lido deck." And Fred Grandy was so pissed he got the guy fired.
What?
But yeah, so Fred Grandy, who played Gopher, he was. But that's the thing. It was either the retirement home for washed-up actors, or it was a springboard for before they were famous actors like Billy Crystal and Tom Hanks, kind of thing. There's one particular episode with, and it pains me to say that in this one episode, John Mills, legendary actor, Academy Award British actor, was on the Love Boat with Haley Mills, his daughter. But that was a side story in this one episode, because the main story in this one Love Boat episode in 1979 was Reggie Jackson was on board. That's right, climb aboard. We're expecting you. Reggie Jackson appeared because apparently the whole premise of this one episode, he was Isaac, the bartender's best friend.
Oh.
Just wanted a little holiday where no one knew who he was, so he can just escape an anonymity on a cruise. And then during the cruise, he was getting pissed off that no one recognized him, that he was Reggie Jackson. And so hilarity ensues.
Sounds like Reggie.
But that's the thing. But sadly, that only because Gavin MacLeod died, and I try to find like a baseball connection. Yes, Reggie Jackson appeared at the height of his fame for 1979, pretty much, the year after he won the 1978 World Series with the Yankees, and at the pinnacle of his career. So he wasn't a washed-up player yet, on the Love Boat. He was at the pinnacle of his career on the Love Boat. And just another side note, I had a thing for Vicky Steubing, the Captain Steubing's daughter.
Because she was my age. She was my age.
She had red hair?
How many actresses?
I know you like redheads.
What about Julie? What about Julie?
Julie, the cruise director, whom I did, but sadly she got fired from the show because she had a drug problem, unfortunately. But I don't want to taint the legacy of Julie, the cruise director.
Why you have to bring that up?
Because you guys did.
Can I just point out, you have literally mentioned every actress from the sort of 80s and 90s. At some stage, you had the hots for.
Moving on. Now we go into the trivia question. Now I've been ejected twice in Major League Baseball, but some other guys have been ejected more than me, and they were in the form of managers. I asked you earlier that Bobby Cox owns the record for 161 ejections by an umpire in Major League Baseball. Tony La Russa is a current active manager with 88 ejections from the game. But then I asked you, which one of these three is second all-time current managers, that is, for most ejections? Was it A, Joe Madden? Was it B, Terry Francona? Or was it C, Bob Melvin? And who's going to go first? I'm going to pick on Johnny Gould, who still hasn't watched Spinal Tap, by the way, to go first.
I've absolutely no clue, so I'm going to go with...
Think of the biggest hothead.
Terry Francona.
Terry Francona. Okay.
He's very mild-mannered.
For no apparent reason.
Josh Chetwin, who will you be picking?
All right, I'll give you my thought process for this. So we were talking earlier about managers nowadays have to protect their players. I sort of feel like Joe Madden was the first guy in this era to be I'm going to protect my guys. And one way in which you always do that is when your player gets into an argument with the umpire, you go out there and you get tossed for him, make the player feel good. Plus Terry Francona with the back issues, I just don't see him going out there. And Bob Melvin, I don't think he was ever a player's manager as much, or still really isn't as much. Go with Joe Madden.
Okay, and then David Langell's reason of thinking?
I think Bob Melvin is a general manager's manager, probably more than anything, which is, hey, he's had a great career, by the way. I will go with Bo Mel because things can get frustrating when you have 6 feet of crap on you all the time out in Oakland.
Okay, well,
50 feet of crap. Excuse me, 50 feet of crap.
In no particular order, Bob Melvin has 46 ejections.
That's nothing.
Terry Francona, 43 ejections.
Oh, Goldie.
Disaster.
It's a bad back.
Joe Madden, 57 ejections.
Good
thus
thought
far
process
and counting.
by Josh. He was right about that.
So basically, Joe Madden
taking
needs
his team on those dumb trips to movie theaters and stuff with bowling alleys and
Drinking
dressing
wine,
up day and all this crap.
Joe Madden
Great
needs
communicator.
Joe Madden needs 105 more to tie or surpass, I should say, Bobby Cox. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Bobby Cox's ejection thing is intact, and that's your trivia of the week.
Big warm welcome to episode 11 of the Jonny and Josh Show. As always, it gives me great pleasure to welcome my dear baseball brothers, Big Davey Lengel, JC, and Eric, the producer. Welcome, boys.
Hello, Johnny.
Episode 11, good number, like 11.
And why is that?
You know what the nickname is for? You know what the nickname is for 11 when someone's up to bat who wears number 11.
Well, I'm assuming it's pretty bad, is it? Like a
No,
substitute?
Sticks.
Okay.
That's what people say.
Hey, Sticks. Come on, Sticks. Let's go, Sticks. What do you say, Sticks? Like that.
Well, number 11 in cricket is the worst batsman, but probably usually the best bowler.
But they don't have numbers in cricket. I don't get it, Johnny.
They do. Well, they go in number 11. They have numbers in terms of the batting order.
Thank you.
But there's something about 11. I can't quite get it. Eric, any thoughts? What is it about number 11?
Well, there was a certain film that we're hoping that you have seen, because we only gave you an 8-month kind of like window to watch it. But yes,
Spinal Tap.
Yes, the Spinal Tap amplifier.
Spinal Tap, of course. Now, do you know that the number 11 is the number that represents intuition? So if it's truly representing intuition, you'd know whether I'd watch Spinal Tap.
And Johnny Gould, have you managed to watch Spinal Tap before episode 11?
No!
Oh,
of course I haven't. The biblical meaning of number 11 comes from my understanding that it's associated with things that must be considered imperfect, a disorganization of systems and the disorder or chaos of things. I am the personification of the biblical number 11. Disorganized, I haven't watched Spinal Tap. Get on with
Amen.
it.
Okay, well, anyways, thank you everyone for coming to Johnny's last show on the Jonny and Josh Show. We will
It's going to be the David and Josh show here quite soon.
Exactly. And,
finally, I get it. Finally, a little billing.
You got a little billing though. Yeah, well, let's not go there.
Yeah, let's moving on to Johnny's last show. Before we go into the trivia question, this is where, yes, we're not going to do this early. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and pointy dance here. You subscribe, click like. If you're listening, subscribe, click like, retweet us, share us on Facebook. Click.
There's no way to look good doing that.
Whatever it is, it's like you gotta big up our social media, and we're gonna move on to the trivia now. In-game trivia, as we used to call it, Channel 5 in the halcyon days of Channel 5. The All-Star Ballot has been released. We're going to be talking about that a little more later on in the show. But my question to you, gentlemen, is which one of these 4 players, believe it or not, has never made the All-Star game, let alone even being voted into the All-Star game?
I know Ichiro's not going to be an example, so it's
we know Ichiro is exactly
Ichiro answer.
It would be a wasted opportunity to throw in Ichiro.
Can't fake Ichiro on that one.
That's important. That little clarification, that is important. This isn't just a case of they didn't play in it. They were never actually entered via the ballot. It wasn't a case of being injured. Is that right? Is that what you've just said?
That is correct.
Okay.
So, and you'll have 4 options here. And you're going to be, your mind will be boggled, saying, no, surely they all must have made it. So here we go.
Shirley.
Is it A, Kirk Gibson? Is it B, Dusty Baker? Is it C, Eric Gagne? Or is it D, Justin Turner? Okay, so
good question, eh?
Very good question.
I loved Gouldie's question because it was like that caveat that he was able to sort of suss out of you is going to be the difference maker for him getting it right.
It was because
I know, and that was like a miracle that he did that.
I just thought he's going to mention 4 really obvious ones, but one of them got injured. But he's made that, he's closed that cul-de-sac. Let's move on to our third ballot of the day, and it's the All-Star Ballot, which has just been launched, even though we're still, almost 6 weeks away from the All-Star game. I think it's July 13th. So the big question, who's in? Who do we anticipate being voted? I mean, there's some obvious ones there, boys. The obvious junior triple that you've already mentioned, Eric, that are absolutely killing it. What's your thoughts? Anybody got an idea on somebody that might make it that perhaps might be a surprise?
I think the most interesting person, and I'm curious to see how this plays out, is Ohtani, right? Is he going to go as a positional player? Is he going to be a pitcher? Will he do both in the game?
That would be amazing if he did both. I'll tell you what, if he did both in the game, that'd be
pretty cool, wouldn't it? Yeah,
history.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see that. I mean, obviously we don't vote as fans on the pitchers, right? We still don't do that. So he could be DH for it and be voted in. The stat that I saw that I was amazed by: second baseman in the National League over the last 10 years, there have been 10 different starters. When we were kids, David, Eric, and myself in the US, they were the same players every year. It really always seemed like, it was like 7 years straight of Mike Schmidt and Pete Rose and Carl Yastrzemski, and those guys would just go in and out. And yeah, there were just these players who were just,
regulars,
always regulars. And now we're seeing that every year there's just a real, there are some players who are clearly regulars, but for the most part, it's a little more fluid. But that was always the fun part. That was always the fun part of the All-Star game.
Who's going to be the odd guy?
Every team had to be represented, and we had some have-nots back then. There'd always be some like Toronto Blue Jays Bob Baylor or something like that, or like Doug Alt, or some guy from the Mariners who you'd never heard of. It was that was kind of fun.
I'm with Josh on this. It was a rite of passage for every youth. In the run up to, you go, for me, for example, you go to Olympic Stadium or Tiger Stadium, and you poke in all the holes for all the expos in every position, and then you stuff the ballot.
Were the ballots in French, Eric?
Yes, actually, and the ballot boxes in Montreal were French and English, right? So it was like really tiny lettering, so it could fit both.
That would be a cool thing to have.
And so I still have just like Josh, I still hoarded a whole bunch of us. I'm sure my mom is already thrown out, but unfortunately, in the basement of the condo. But what my favorite thing as well was going to Blue Jays game when my short period of youth and going in Toronto, and I'd be the only one wearing a Detroit Tigers cap in a sea of Toronto blue, and poking all the Tigers and the ballot box just to piss off my Toronto friends. That's a rite of passage. But moving on.
Did you never consider doing a Brewster's Millions and just writing none of the above?
So we have no All-Star game.
Very cute, John.
Okay, moving on. It's time for the seventh inning stretch. And while we're stretching, Dave's going to go and find the punchline. What's the baseball book of the week this week?
This week, I'm going to a very endearing book, actually. One I forgot that I had in my shelf. It is called Perfect Once Removed by Philip Hoos. When baseball was all the world to me. Great story about a guy, and I have empathy with him as well. A guy who was terrible at baseball, and just got picked last in Little League and school and all that kind of stuff. But he absolutely adored baseball. Followed baseball religiously. It was his end all that be all, despite him being a terrible baseball player. And he had the accolade of the only reason why people liked him in school is because he was Don Larson's cousin. Hence the title, Perfect Once Removed. It's one of those, if you would put Home Alone and Christmas Story and sort of like the Goonies with a baseball backdrop, that's what you get. Baseball Once Removed, Eric Jansen's baseball book of the week.
That's awesome, Eric.
Yeah.
I know every book almost that you ever bring up. I've never heard of that book. That's really
Philip
cool.
Hoos, and he's not Canadian. That's his last name, Hoos, Hoose. Moving on to pop culture, because this would have been a lot more fun if somebody watched Spinal Tap, but they didn't. This week's pop culture crossing into baseball is, believe it or not, Spinal Tap. Did you know that Johnny Gould interviewed Rob Reiner at the 2006 All-Star Game, who was the director of Spinal Tap? Did you know that Johnny Gould interviewed Billy Crystal in 2008 All-Star Game, who has an appearance in Spinal Tap?
Did they?
Had they known at the time that Johnny Gould had never seen Spinal Tap, they probably refused the interview altogether. Let's face it.
I doubt it. I think they just knew that I was a very good interviewer.
They probably just for the biggest idiot known to mankind. But that's just me. So the tenuous link here is because Rob Reiner, director of Spinal Tap, interviewed by Johnny Gould, huge baseball fan, huge Dodgers fan, as we found out in Pittsburgh when he gave us his time. And when Johnny asked him, what do you prepare for? Because for this celebrity softball game that you usually do before, he goes, preparation H. That's it for his hemorrhoids. And Billy Crystal, of course, as we know, huge baseball fan, huge Yankees fan, has probably one of the most hilarious scenes where he plays a mime at a dinner party in Spinal Tap. When he starts yelling to another mime who's not performing properly, he goes, "Come on, mime is money." And did you know who that other mime was? No. Dana Carvey. When people do that, the other mime in that scene was Dana Carvey, also a baseball fan, by the way, and a baseball collector. So one scene as well, I'll cap this off as well, is they go to Tokyo. They'll play on stage at Tokyo in that concert. You remember, Johnny? No, you don't. And Nigel Tufnell is wearing a Giants jersey on stage in Tokyo, but it's
not Tokyo Giants jersey or a San Francisco Giants?
Yomiuri, and it has number one in the back. Number one in the back, which is Sadahiro jersey. Right. So that's my tenuous link. But one more thing.
Do you know the nickname for the mascot for Yomiuri Giants?
I did know this. Refresh me.
It's Giabit.
And
here he is. Here he is in all his glory.
For those looking at YouTube,
this is Giabit.
Oh yes, I know that.
That's Giabit. So he's the giant rabbit. Giants rabbit.
And I think I believe has been inducted into the Baseball Mascot Hall of Fame. Must have been, or at least should be on the ballot, I say. On one sad note, by the way, Ian Faith, the manager of Spinal Tap in the film, played by Tony Hendra, he British actor, went to school with John Cleese and Grant Chapman, almost became part of Monty Python, but then he went on to do National Lampoon and be in Spinal Tap. He died 2 months ago. I only just found this out today, that whatever happened to Tony Hendra, who played Ian Faith. He passed away in March of this year at the age of 79 from Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. That's R.I.P. Tony Hendra. There you go. And that's
there's a sadness in this episode.
Yeah, it's hard to, my job is that sort of, the Segway king, and I've got a lift, and it's almost impossible.
And it's just, of course, one of the saddest thing is that Johnny still has not seen Spinal Tap. Moving on.
I cannot believe you've just drawn a comparison.
I know.
That's one
sauce right there.
That's why they have editing.
Okay.
Yeah, so that trivia answer, no, just tying up nicely with our All-Star chat. Earlier, I asked you before in the show, which one of these four players had never been voted in to the All-Star game? Was it A, Kirk Gibson? Was it B, Dusty Baker, C, Eric Gagne, or D, Justin Turner? Gentlemen, start your engines.
Shall I go first?
Yes.
Because I've just brought him up. I'm pretty convinced it's Justin Turner.
He's never appeared in the All-Star game.
No.
Okay.
That's going to be my tip, and that's why I brought him up. And I should mention when I said he may be the.
Can we keep this trivia base, please? Less waffle.
Yeah,
David Lengel, please.
I'm going to go with Dusty.
Dusty Baker, never made an appearance.
Always a really good player, but not a great player.
Okay.
Did you specify he had to be a player? Because I'm pretty sure Dusty's been there as a manager.
I said player. You don't get voted in as manager.
Wow. Gouldy is on the spot.
Unbelievable.
He's looking for any
angle.
Angles.
You are playing everything today.
Okay, so we got Justin Turner from Johnny Gould. We have Dusty Baker from David Lengel, and Josh Chatwin will provide us with.
Yeah, I know Justin Turner was in the All-Star game there, Goldie. So you're not gonna be right, buddy. And I remember Dusty Baker with the Dodgers in those years. So so it leaves me two, and I'm pretty sure Gagne went at the height of his career. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, Gagne's definitely good.
Go with Kirk Gibson.
So, in no particular, whatever order I want to give it in, actually. Justin Turner has appeared in one All-Star game.
One.
Correct.
Oh, come on, give it to me.
No,
That's surprising.
he appeared in a Eric Gagne, yes, got voted in for 3 All-Star games.
Yeah, I knew Gagne was.
Dusty Baker had 2 All-Star games, and Kirk Gibson never voted in. Got invited twice, but he refused. He wanted to take the break, and he didn't want to be a reserve. So there you go.
Wanted to take the break.
So hang on, that doesn't count.
That's
he was
terrible.
invited.
He was invited, not voted in. Thank you very much.
Okay. Dave, you know what our job is on this podcast? Just to make JC look good.
and you're talking about heavy lifts. That's a heavy lift.
Yeah, so surprise, it's very shocking. Kirk Gibson, hero of Detroit, a hero of LA, of course, with that famous home run, never played in an All-Star game. There you go. Moving on. Before we get to that important subject, I'd like to add that there were things. There were a lot of emails and messages on our various social medias that you purposely avoided because it's from the hashtag Make Johnny Watch Spinal Tap.
Big warm welcome to episode 13 of the Jonny and Josh Show. Well known, of course, as Unlucky 13 for some, and definitely unlucky for JC and I, because this truly is the Jonny and Josh Show, because we're the only ones here. We've lost Eric, we've lost Big Dave, and it's an unlucky number in history, as we know, JC. Are you feeling the pain that I'm feeling?
Gouldy, I feel like we're podcasting without a safety net. I mean, we can always rely on something silly and off the wall from either Dave or Eric. And it's old times, man. It's just the two of us.
It is like old times. And obviously, just to stick with the tradition of this new podcast that we've been doing now for a couple of seasons, I will just reference the number 13 in history. It brings the test, the suffering, and the death. It symbolizes the death to the matter or to oneself, and the birth to the spirit, the passage on a higher level of existence. Well, hopefully Big Dave and Eric are somewhere on a higher level of existence, but let's hope the death is not right. Judas, of course, from a biblical reference, the 13th diner. We don't want him to be invited anyway, but I'm loving this because I know you're an intelligent man, you're an educated man. Have you ever heard of the word, and I'm going to have to look at it because I certainly can't remember it, triskaidekapophobia? Phobia, that's it.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, that's fear of the number 13, right?
It is. The Greek-derived word meaning the fear of number 13. I'm more fearful of trying to say a word like that rather than fearing number 13. Now, normally I'd be thrown to Eric at this stage to round off the introduction to say, what's your trivia this week? I almost felt, and I know you agreed with me, that it wouldn't be right to do the trivia because we haven't got Eric with us. But actually, in honor of Eric, I do want to do the trivia, if that's all right with JC. But what I'm going to suggest is we alternate. I'll do it one week, you do it the next week, if we're going to be on our own for a few weeks. So would you be kind enough to do this week's Eric in-game trivia?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, Gouldy, I'm a poor imitation of our friend Eric Jansen. I don't eat as well as him, I don't wear the dodgy, collared shirts wide open for his belly to hang out. Like, I don't do any of those things.
You take your cap off, more often than not. Yeah, so there's no
This is
similarity.
true. And for those who are watching this on YouTube, I am wearing a Montreal Expos cap this week in Eric's honor.
I noticed that, buddy, and I didn't even mention it. I know, and that's in his honor, is it? Is that
of course? Yeah,
so, if you'd warned me, should I be wearing some kind of a Mets top or a Mets cap in Big Dave's honor?
I think you should wear your Chipper Jones jersey because he owned the Mets.
He did. You're right. I'll go and get the Chipper Jones jersey off the slide, and that'll be in honor of Big Dave. I'm sure that'll go down very well. Anyway, sorry, you were going to say.
So here's my poor imitation of our good friend Eric Jansen, Eric Stumper. We'll try and do Josh's somewhat stumper on this one, and this is to respect our past history. So it's just the two of us. Of course, the Channel 5 show started in the 1990s, in 1997. So you have your knowledge of baseball. I know that anything before your time working with something, there's no chance. So I wouldn't do that to you. Exactly.
Good man.
You shut her down, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you something that at least partially begins with your time with baseball. Okay. So here is the question, Gouldy. Which major leaguer had the most hits in the 1990s? Okay, most hits in the 1990s.
But you just said it yourself. The show started in 1997. I've got 7 years that's relevant to this question.
You will recognize all these names.
All right, so, you're going to give me. Oh, you're giving me.
I'll give you four choices. Okay. All right.
Yeah, go on.
So A, Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah, love Ken.
B,
Griffey.
Tony Gwynn.
Oh, Gwynny.
C, Mark Grace.
Mark Grace. Okay,
Yep.
yeah.
And D, who has a connection to our wonderful game still to this day because of his son, Dante Bichette.
Ooh, Dante
All right,
Bichette.
so a couple of big, Hall of Famers, couple guys who weren't quite as good, who maybe had a good run.
Yeah. So this is most hits in the 90s.
Most hits in the 1990s.
Okay, most hits in the 90s. Okay, I'm writing that down.
A. Ken Griffey Jr., B. Tony Gwynn, C. Mark Grace, D. Dante Bichette.
And I've got that. I've got that pretty much to the end of the show. Something stretched to come up with some kind of logical decision. Okay,
but here's can I tell you the problem though with just the two of us? You're not going to have time to sort of clandestinely sneak on your phone and try and find an answer.
You'll be surprised what I'm capable of doing. I'm going to let you waffle on while you're doing it. I'm going to look at the camera and nod while I'm holding my phone up.
Fantastic.
I promise not to do that. Okay, right. And I'm now going to do something. Ding! That was me hitting the bell because I haven't got a bell to hit. So.
I love that your ding sounds like a clap.
Yeah, maybe doing that wasn't so clever. I should have done that off camera, shouldn't I?
Yeah, or something like that.
Okay, let's move things along. Our third banner up the bat, and I know this is one you really wanted to get into, and I'm really pleased. Baseball's embracing of Negro leagues is an atonement, not a validation. That was the quote of an article, which went on to say, numbers drive baseball, but for decades, the human aspect of the game, specifically the racism that pro baseball both reflected and perpetuated, clouded that data. While the feats of white players were carefully recorded and celebrated, the accomplishment of black players in the Negro leagues was set apart or, even worse, forgotten entirely. And now we've got the announcement of baseballreference.com, which you tell me is the messiah of baseball stats. Announced Tuesday, it's added
more the Mecca than the Messiah.
Mecca, okay, yeah. The Mecca, okay. Important terminology. Thank you for that. It has added more than 3,400 Negro League players to its database. And just before I bring you in, because I know you're going to absolutely go major on this one, it is really fascinating to put the immediate results of this. There is Tatello Vargas of the 1943 New York Cubans is now credited with the single-seeding batting average record of 471. So he's gone right to the top of the pile. Oscar Charleston is now listed in 4th in career OPS, and that's ahead of Barry Bonds. That's ahead of Jimmy Fox. That's ahead of Josh Gibson. So these are major developments, and I'm assuming this is what you're going to get into, long overdue.
Oh, without a doubt. Gouldy, I want to give you an analogy, and you're going to have to stick with me because it may be a little bit out there.
Go for it.
That really puts this in perspective. I've written a couple of books on language. And one of the things about language that always comes up is, for definitions, what should drive it? Should it be what's in the dictionary, or should it be usage? And an example would be like the phrase champing at the bit, which means you're really keen, you're really excited. Over years, people now use chomping with the bit. So should it be what we see in the dictionary, champion at the bit is what we use, or should it be chomping with the bit because everyone says it that way? So is it the book, or is it the usage? What Major League Baseball tried to do is, with this announcement about the Negro Leagues and making it a major league, official major league, was to change the rules, the rules about the way we see it. But you also need to change the usage in order for it to work. And that's true with language. In my opinion, it's really a combination of the two, right? You look at the rules, but you really need the usage as well too. And that's what's so great about this, and why this is so important, is that we go from this sort of nebulous rule that Major League Baseball is offering to proper usage. This is what anyone who is a real fan of baseball looks at when they look at history. They go to Baseball Reference. And this is the proper application and what is necessary to really make what Major League Baseball said stick in the real world. I am beyond chuffed that this has occurred, because this is what is required for us to take that step to truly appreciate and truly respect it. If it had just been Major League Baseball saying, oh, the Negro Leagues, they're an official league, their stats are official, but nothing was done in the outside world to memorialize that, to make that part of our conversation. And right, for baseball, stats are the lingua franca. It is the language of baseball. Yeah. And so this move is huge. It's huge for the sport. It's huge for our historical understanding. And it's a great move. I've always been a huge fan of Baseball Reference, and this just increases my respect for the people who run it.
Here's a quote that I loved. "We are not bestowing a new status on these players or their accomplishments." This is Baseball Reference. "The Negro Leagues have always been major leagues. We are changing our site's presentation to properly recognize this fact." And I love that. I love that. I love that statement that no matter whether they've been treated like major leaguers, they've always been major leaguers. And what's happening now is not changing that.
For sure. And you look at some of the pages for these players now, and Satchel Paige's history on the site goes from, wow, he had some interesting major league experiences. He did great with the Indians, was able to come back and play a little bit with the Athletics right at the end, to, oh my God, this is one of the greatest pitchers of all time, because all of a sudden his statistics from his whole Negro League career are now integrated in with those major league statistics. And you get a better context for who this player was. It's fantastic. I love Baseball Reference. I'm in it, so I love them because they include minor leaguers as well too. So my very brief minor league career is in there as well. It's just a great site. When I was a kid, there was this book called the Baseball Encyclopedia. It was this thick book, and they would update it every handful of years, and my dad would always get it for me. And it was the paper was wafer thin because it had the statistic for every major leaguer, and there was no internet. And it was this wonderful resource that spoke to me in the game in a language I understood, which was batting average, RBIs. There were none of these advanced analytics, and it made me so happy. And Baseball Reference is the extension of that in this era, and they have all the analytics, and it's so great for them to take what had become a rule and make usage a part of our understanding of it.
Yeah, and obviously the equivalent for our English baseball fans is Wisden. If you're into cricket, the Wisden is like the almanac, and it's got and that includes actually schoolboy cricket. So I've appeared in a couple of the Wisdens when I was still at school at Epsom College. With my dodgy batting average. But yeah, you're right. It's. I mean, I remember getting a copy just simply because I was in there. It's so exciting and referencing all the real cricketers. I know you're a massive fan of Bob Kendrick, the president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. I want to mention another quote that Bob comes out with. The Negro League players themselves were never seeking validation from anyone. They knew how good they were. They knew how good their league was. It's a great story. It's horribly long overdue. It should not be a conversation we're having in 2021.
And there's more action that still needs to be done. Right now, there is an effort to rename the National League MVP trophy for Josh Gibson. It's right now Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who was the longtime commissioner, who honestly, whether you believe it or not, there's a lot in the gray area and the ether of time, but he was certainly a person who was in the middle of the segregation period of baseball. His name is on the trophy right now, and I love this move. There's been this really fun online effort to help bring attention to this, in that artists have drawn baseball cards of Josh Gibson to support it. Andy Brown, who's one of our great baseball artists here in the UK, or not here, but in the UK. He did one of them. He did a great baseball card type painting of Josh Gibson. And I hope that will be another step in the process.
Fantastic. Not a good story in some respects, but a great story in others. So one of those odd ones. And thanks for bringing it to my attention. We need you to finish with the in-game trivia. You set the question. Can you remind our listeners, please?
Yeah, so in the theme, Eric Jr.'s stumper, right? Because we've got a Junior's theme for the show. So our question was, in homage to the origins of our friendship, although this predated my time on the Channel 5 show. That show started in the 1990s. So we are looking for the most hits in the 1990s by a major league player. And I gave you 4 options, Gouldy, to cogitate on. Yep. The first one in A is Ken Griffey Jr.
Yep.
B was Tony Gwynn.
Yep.
C, Mark Grace, or D, Dante Bichette.
Okay, well, the first 2 are the ones that I'm much more familiar with, and are in my, I'd probably say, top 10 all-time favorite players. I love the swing of Ken Griffey Jr. I love the fact that he accepted and aged gracefully and endured injury rather than start doing the juice. Body shape never changed, and he had such a sweet swing. Loved Ken Griffey Jr. Think of him more, though, as a home run hitter, if I'm honest. Tony Gwynn, whereas huge average, always seem to get the bat on ball. And because I don't really know the other 2 nearly as well, that's why I'm going with Gwynny, one of the superstars that I love to watch. So my prediction is Tony Gwynn.
Solid pick, Goldie. Definitely solid pick.
But wrong.
Thanks for trying. Let me go through them.
Do I get a sticker? You did well. You
get a plush toy, but not the big one. You get the little one.
Okay.
Put
me out of my misery.
Okay. So in no particular order, to quote Eric Jansen, Dante Bichette had 1,584 hits in his 1990s career. Ken Griffey Jr., 1,622 hits.
Ooh, okay.
Tony Gwynn, 1,713 hits.
Oh, well, second is worse. I'm on the rostrum.
Well, that's why I said you get the small plush toy. And so that leaves us with Mark Grace, the Cubs first baseman, a dodgy fellow if you look at his time after. He was a good old boy in all the wrong ways, but was a great contact hitter for those Cubs teams. 1,754 hits. Number 2 is Rafael Palmeiro, actually.
Oh, that's right. And you didn't even put him on the list. See if you put
him.
Well,
I now understand the thought process that goes into it. It's hard, right? Because you want to. I was originally going to put in Cal Ripken and Tony Gwynn, and then Mark Grace was going to stand out, right? Because I was going to give you 3 superstars and who is different from the rest. So I had to put in Dante Bichette to kind of mix it up.
Okay, I like
that. A little more
I like that logic. You just wanted to stump me. It's been an absolute joy to be with my old mucker after all these years, just the two of us on the podcast. Thank you for joining me, mate.
Goldie, I love the 4 of us, but this was fun.
Good evening, fellow baseball nuts, and a big one. Welcome to episode 14 of the Jonny and Josh Show, renamed today the Jonny, Josh, and Big Dave Lengel Show. Great to have Dave.
Finally. Juice. Give me some juice, baby.
David,
he was holding out. It was like a spring training holdout. He was like, I'm not coming back till my name's on the market.
Now that Eric's gone, I can finally start my plan to take over.
Well, look, despite having you back, we're still going to keep with some other traditions, and obviously one of them is the reference to 14. This is episode 14. The biblical reference, according to the Bible, is considered to be a symbol of salvation and deliverance. And you are the salvation, and you are the deliverance, Big Dave, because you're back to hold our hands. And actually, the 14th day of the first Hebrew month is called Nisan and is the Passover. That's for you, Big Dave. That's in your honor.
And Josh, too. Don't forget.
And Josh as well. I keep forgetting.
Thank you.
I'm outnumbered here, guys. I'm outnumbered.
That's right. We got you now. Be careful.
But hey, move away from religion. Move away from religion. You'll love this. Did you know that 14 is the minimum age limit? You can drive a 50cc bike in Italy.
I didn't realize.
There you go. There you go.
I was thinking about that the other day.
How much Googling did that take, Goldie?
I mean,
that's like
minutes.
2 hours of Googling.
It's also the most common age of criminal responsibility in Europe. I thought that was quite relevant to both of you. Anyway, notable 14s in the world of baseball. Any spring to mind?
Or do you Ernie Banks.
Ernie
Banks.
Ernie Banks.
Number 1.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the popular one. I'm going with Gil Hodges.
Okay.
Really?
Manager of the New York Mets in the 1969, and of course the steady first baseman for the Brooklyn Dodgers.
And perhaps the best player not in the Hall of Fame.
That's the argument.
Yeah.
That's the argument. There's people that say, if you look at his WAR, it doesn't hold up. And that he would be, among the lesser folks. But then they say, hey, look, Harold Baines is in the Hall of Fame. Why isn't Gil Hodges in there?
Okay.
Well, and I mean, I think more than that, Larry Doby, number 4.
Larry Doby.
Larry Doby, huge. First African-American player in the American League.
I'm still amazed you haven't mentioned one name. We're talking great players that aren't in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, my God.
Cincinnati Reds. Pete Rose.
Well, good. Good, Goldie.
Thank you.
He wore that with the Reds, with the big red machine.
This is also one I actually like.
I mean, we should poll each of us. I mean, I will say I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. Dave?
I think he's done his time. I'd like to see all those folks get in. And now that they're doing with the DraftKings and all this and now they're trying to get in on the gambling money, enough already.
Yeah, agreed. Goldie?
100%. Pete Rose, definitely. We're focusing on baseball. Okay. Right, trivia question. Moving next, and I've taken responsibility this week. I think you're going to enjoy it, guys. I've come up with a cracker. It's a very simple question. You know how Eric always tries to justify the reason he's doing it and waffles on for hours. I'm just going straight in with a question. Because as you know, I was the former presenter of a couple of game shows on Channel 5. I'm sure you remember.
Yes, that's true. My
remember those days?
Enjoy watching that.
That's right.
How it was actually
Memory Bank, otherwise known as Memory Loss, and Brain Teaser, otherwise known by my friends as Brain Dead, but that's another story. Here's the question. What MLB rookie hit 7 home runs in his first 6 games? Was it, I'm giving you a choice, A, Albert Pujols? Was it B, Big Barry Bonds? Was it C, Trevor Story? Or was it D, Ken Griffey Jr.?
I think I know that one.
You think you know that one?
Josh knows that one too.
No, I thought that was a good question.
That's what I think. I don't know. It's just what I think. I have a feeling he has that eating grin on his face like he knows.
Yeah, I always have that look on my face. So don't I?
Yeah, he just hasn't been to the toilet.
It's why I'm limited with friends.
We don't have a physical bell, Dave. So last week we just did loads of different bell sounds. So what are we going to go with this week?
Dong dong.
Ding.
No, it was different each time. It's different each time. So that's the first one. Go ahead, Dave. Do it again.
Ding.
Okay.
Let's
move on.
Like a campy, sexy ding.
Okay. Third battle up. JC, this is your personal favorite. It is, of course, the College World Series. And I understand Mississippi State advanced to the College World Series final with a victory over Texas on Saturday night. But the other fixture, controversy. Do you want to fill us in?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite times of the year for baseball, which is the College World Series. You go to Omaha, Nebraska, where it's been for donkey's years, and it's just a wonderful baseball experience. And as a college baseball player, Dave, I'm sure Dave Lingell, when he was a kid in Little League, you dreamt about going to Williamsport. When I played Division I college baseball, my dream was to go to Omaha. And so it's a huge deal. And there was a really great Cinderella story through most of the season. It was the North Carolina State, the Wolfpack. And they started their season 1-8, struggled, all of a sudden turned it around in a very competitive ACC conference. Their division was able to find a way, get into the postseason, upset teams all along the way. There are a couple of levels before you go to the World Series. There's a regional and a super regional. They won those, made it to the World Series, go 2-0 in their first two games, beat Vanderbilt, who is really one of those blue blood college baseball programs at the moment. And then all of a sudden, COVID. They get so many players who tested positive for COVID or through tracing issues, unable to play. They actually were able to pull off one game before they had done all the testing, and they played with 13 players and lost a really close game. They were having players playing out of position, yet they still—
That's clever.
They were still in it, but then they had to forfeit, concede the other game.
What a bunch of idiots, man.
And I'm going to have to go with Dave on this. I normally don't like to cast aspersions on players.
Go ahead. Cast them, Josh, right now.
I will be chucking some aspersions here for
Thank
a
you.
moment. Because they interviewed their head coach who said, look, I don't want to get into the politics of this. And I'm like, this is insane. This is not politics.
Moron.
You get vaccinated. This was so easy. And as a coach, you have a responsibility to your team. These are kids. They're not adults. They're kids. And
you're in college. You should be smart. You're in college. You're smart, right?
Heartbroken for North Carolina State, who were really these great underdogs who had a chance to, potentially make it all the way to the finals. Bottom line is, it shows that America still hasn't figured it out
No, they have not. And by the way, you talked about dreams when we were in Little League. My dream in Little League was to have enough money after the game to have a hot dog and a Coke. I wasn't thinking about going to Williamsport. I was thinking about where I'm going to get my next hot dog. And if I still had enough to have a quarter to call my parents for a ride home afterwards.
You are definitely sitting in for Eric Jansen in this episode.
I think you've had too many Cokes, quite frankly. I'm going to pick up on this. The NC State Athletic Director, Boo Corrigan, said in a statement Saturday morning, the health and safety of our student athletes and staff will always be our unwavering priority. The timing of this is simply devastating for everyone involved, but it doesn't diminish their incredible accomplishments. Nobody's going to argue with that. But if the health and safety of your students and athletes and staff is your unwavering priority, why haven't you got them vaccinated?
Well, those statements just don't add up, Johnny.
I agree, Johnny. I think that is, a height of hypocrisy, that statement, because it reflects a misunderstanding of what needs to get done in order to have the opportunity to go and play in these things. Force the players to do it. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to travel to Omaha, and you could have gone much farther.
And that's so strange because we're hearing so much about kids on a college level having to get vaccinated to go back into university and stay in dorms. We are hearing about that, as we do hear it, obviously, on a high school level. For years, we've been forced to get our vaccinations to get into school. I'm not sure why the boat has been missed on this one.
Yeah, I mean, and the opportunity was there. It's not like we don't have enough vaccines in the U.S. to make this happen. It's shocking.
Just to round this story off for me, JC, why is College World Series baseball important?
It's more important, frankly, than it ever was in the past, because we've seen the contraction of minor league baseball. You're going to see more kids going into the college game because the opportunities in the professional level, those level of money to get to, forego your college experience is different. But there's
just less roster spots.
Right. And there are less roster spots. But more than that, the college game is fun in the way that the college game is fun in American football and college basketball. It's a little sloppier. You have players who may not be, look at me. I played Division I college baseball. You have players who don't have tremendous talent getting an opportunity to still play at an incredibly high level. Yeah. And honestly, there's something about not being as good that makes the game almost more appealing. That, you have a guy who somehow is throwing 82 miles an hour and getting guys out. There was a guy I played with on the Great Britain national team who I pulled into it, who won the championship game of the College World Series when he was in college with Cal State Fullerton. He was a left-hander. He threw his name was Eddie Delzer. He threw 83 miles an hour, but the guy just knew how to pitch. The type of guy who would never make it to the major leagues, but you watch that at the college level, painting the corners. He threw a changeup on 3-2 counts that got people swinging and missing all the time. And that's fun. That's something beautiful about the game that you lose when you get to the highest level of the sport.
Hear, hear.
Great stuff. Ding, ding. And by the way, even though I've hit the ding, ding, best of luck to Vanderbilt and to Mississippi State. We'll revisit that when we know how they both got on. Okay. Ding, ding again. It's seventh inning stretch time, guys, and it's certainly, I think we've earned it. This is that time when we feel a little bit emotional, Big Dave, because obviously this is the moment that we would normally throw to our dear friend Eric.
Oh, yes, I'm feeling very emotional right now.
Are you feeling? You're not doing a very good job of proving it.
I feel very, very sad and very emotional.
Okay.
He's at Wimbledon. Come on. Who's having a better time right now? He's out there at Wimbledon.
I know.
I don't feel sad for him. My room without air conditioning.
Right, Dave. We're not feeling sad for him. We're feeling sad for us.
Oh, sad for us.
We are the lesser.
Can I just point out that we're recording this at 39 minutes past midnight British time, so he ain't at Wimbledon. If he is,
that's true.
He's getting arrested for stalking. Exactly. He's at home. He's in bed, and he's
probably cutting stuff for tomorrow. They work that boy.
Exactly. Yeah. So the responsibility for baseball book of the week has fallen on your shoulders, JC. What have you got for us?
I'm going to talk about a book that I love very much, and I alluded to this book in a crossover discussion I had with you, Johnny Gould, on Behind Home Plate. Yeah. It was a 2006 book by a Wall Street Journal reporter by the name of Sam Walker, and it was called Fantasyland, and I highly recommend it. It's a little dated, 2006, but still a really fun read, and here was the conceit of the book. Sam Walker, as a reporter who got to get the access to clubhouses across Major League Baseball, joins one of the biggest fantasy leagues called Tout Wars, and decides that because of this access, he wants to see whether or not he can use his information that he gets from being able to be with players to win this league. And I'm not going to give away whether he wins it or loses, but it's a fun story about all the things he did. He hired a guy who was a NASA scientist, like an astrophysicist, to help him with the analytics piece of it. He hired another person. Those two people actually ended up getting very involved with baseball. And it's a great story both about the history of fantasy baseball, and the reason I alluded to it in our discussion is it actually made reference to a fantasy league I played in the mid-'80s with my dad. It was one of the first
now you're talking
fantasy leagues. But
it's a great story.
I'm not going to go into details. But so I really love that. I wasn't expecting when I was reading the book, but the book is a really great read. I really recommend it if you love fantasy baseball and you want to see whether or not inside info can actually carry you to the top of the heights of fantasy baseball, or whether it's something innate that Johnny Gould.
But did they win or lose? That's what I really want to know.
I told you, I'm not going to give it away.
Absolutely.
I know. I have to ask the hard question, so I want to ask that.
Dave,
again.
all you need to know.
I'm a real journalist, Josh.
Josh recommended this to me, and he knew that normally I didn't read books without pictures, and I went away and I bought it and I read it and I loved it.
Of course you read it. It's about fantasy.
You read my book suggestion before you saw Spinal Tap. This is like a highlight moment for me.
This is once in a lifetime lightning in a bottle stuff.
You will love this book. So it's a great suggestion, and I can give you the big ticks there, JC. Fantasyland, what a great read that is for anybody that's into baseball, let alone fantasy baseball. But what about popular culture, JC? We're putting all the responsibility on your shoulders. What can you come up with this week in the world?
Okay, well, one of the things Eric typically does here is try and find something obscure or interesting from a bigger type of production that we know of. I'm actually going to go really straight ahead, just to do something different. I'm going to talk about one of the great baseball movies of all time, and I would argue an underrated baseball movie. And the only reason for that is because I consider it one of my top 3 or 4 of all time, and that is Major League, starring Tom Berenger, Corbin Burnson, Charlie Sheen, Dennis Haysbert,
Wesley Snipes.
Great film. So I'm going to give some trivia. Last night, just by chance, we actually hadn't discussed what we were going to do. I was actually reading some trivia about it, and there were some really great little nuggets that I found out. The one that I love is probably first and foremost, and this is so Charlie Sheen. We know #winning, crazy Charlie Sheen. He claimed on more than one occasion that he actually did steroids to improve his velocity beforehand. So he was, of course, the pitcher, Wild Thing, and he said that he was able to increase his velocity from low 80s to mid 80s as a result of his use of steroids. So he copped to that in a way that other players didn't. Second thing, the film was shot less in Cleveland; it was shot in Milwaukee. For the most part. Bob Uecker, of course, who actually said about Charlie Sheen that he thought that Sheen was good enough to have been a professional baseball player, that he was that impressed with his mechanics. And watch him, for me, and I've said this to you guys before, is that one of the big criteria for me liking a baseball movie is whether the baseball looks real or not. If it doesn't, it just loses me. The baseball looks real there, and for more than anything, it's because of Charlie Sheen and how good his mechanics are on the hill. But Uecker, a lot of his great lines, like just a bit outside, those were all vamped. So those weren't written into the script. He was the one who came up with it. And last two things is, I don't want to give away anything, plot spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it, but if you haven't, you're listening to our podcast, shame on you. You should have at least seen this.
Somebody listening to this podcast hasn't seen Major League?
Well, one of the big characters, one of the big villains is the owner of the team. And actually, the way it was originally set up, the owner has a moment in which she actually gets redeemed at the end, but the test audiences hated it so much they wanted her to be the villain all the way to the end that they actually cut that and had to reshoot the ending so that she didn't have a moment of vindication. And finally, Dennis Haysbert, who was, of course, the president on 24, he, on a number of occasions, is playing the big hitter Serrano, the Cuban player, Jobu and all that. In a number of instances, he's looked upon to hit a home run, and he actually hit a home run every time he was expected in the script to hit a home run.
Wow.
A home run in the final game. That's like a really exciting moment. He did it every time. He was that good a hitter. He was also in that movie with Tom Selleck, Mr. Baseball, where he plays in Japan. He plays like the other Ganji and the other foreign player. So he was a guy who had baseball experience, but still very impressive to hit a home run on cue.
I have a story about that movie. I'm going to tell it to you very quickly. 2012, I was in Boston on a job. I was also writing for The Guardian at the time. I got myself some credentials. The Indians were in town. I was looking for a story, so I went in before game time. I walk into the Cleveland Indians clubhouse, and on TV is Major League, and they are all watching it. It was unbelievable. You could not make it up even for 5 seconds. I mean, the luck of the draw to just walk in that day. And I went around asking them, does this stuff add up? Does this feel, is it authentic? And they agreed. They thought it was very authentic about, the camaraderie of the team, et cetera. And I went around asking them who was who. And they all, one of them said, I only get invited out to dinner when Travis Hafner invites me, because he was the one, he had just signed like a $13 million deal. And a lot of fun moments. I will post that article on our Twitter and on our Facebook page. But one of the highlights of my career, without a doubt.
Nice.
Fantastic. Great story, buddy. Great story. Okay, well, that moves us into the trivia question. Quick reminder for everybody out there, what MLB rookie hit 7 home runs in his first 6 games? I gave you 4 choices. A, Albert Pujols, B, Big Barry Bonds, C, Trevor Story, or D, Ken Griffey Jr. Dave,
I'm going first.
Confidence.
I never go first.
Okay, you go first.
And I'm going to beat Josh to the punch because he has that ass-eating grin on his face, because I know he knows this one because he lives in the town where it happened.
Yep, you're right.
And we all remember when Trevor Story came into the league and went ape crap for the absolutely bananas over his first 7 games and hit all those home runs. So that is my answer, is Trevor Story, soon to be free agent.
Do you feel better now, David? Does it feel better to go first?
Look, I have a very bad life. And these are the things that made me feel better about myself. So thank you.
So, what I can do for David is I can confirm that he's correct. So I'm going to do that for David.
Thanks.
Okay.
Look, he's trying to take my moment in the sun and make it about him. Can you believe that? He's going to confirm that I'm right.
Focus.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for confirming me.
Can I just the two of you are that confident. So what if
Very
you're wrong?
Confident.
What if I tell you you're wrong? Then how are you going to feel?
Then you would be wrong.
You're absolutely right. I would be wrong because you're right. Correct.
Yes,
Trevor's story is the right answer.
Josh's blessing was correct. Thanks, Josh, for blessing me.
See, Dave, if I had have said you were wrong, all of a sudden the world would have changed and it would have been Ken Griffey Jr. I have that power.
Thank you for taking on that.
Can I take this moment just to point out that when Eric does this, most of us get it wrong. We feel ashamed. We feel in some way
and
inferior.
last week, Goldie, you got it wrong when it was my turn.
Yeah, exactly. Which says everything about what a lovely guy I am.
You're a giver.
You guys,
You're
exactly. I'm a giver.
You're a giver, all right.
I'm a giver.
Next.
Ding dong.
Ding.
Moving on. Boys, we are nearing the end of the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. I have to say, Dave, Josh and I loved having a two-ball last week, but it's an absolute joy to have you this week.
There's nothing like a good threesome.
I think we might be overusing the editor this week, JC.
Yeah, I think so too. You said we're near the end of the show. I say we are at the end of the show.
I agree. Here.
Fantastic. Boys, love you loads. Thank you so much for joining us. My baseball brothers, that's it from us. Thank you to all of you listeners. We'll be back next week for episode 15 of the Jonny and Josh Show. We look forward to having your company. Till then, stay well, stay safe.